right. We are here in the studio, acceleratedradio.net. Mr. Kevin Nash, God bless you. Mr. Rashid, God bless you. God bless you. And God bless Elder T.C. Burrell, Valley Worship, for bringing us in every week with that awesome, beautiful music. I got my blessing. And if you all want a copy of that song and you want that project, you can still get it off of Amazon. And I just want to thank God for him and thank God for faithfulness. Thank God for another week. Thank God for keeping us on this past week. That was a bit turbulent, historical, chaotic, and then some, all of the above. But how many do you know that God uses chaos to speak order? God uses chaos to speak order. When God's getting ready to change your life, there are two of the most major indicators that you can use to signify the season. And one of those signifiers, one of those ways that God communicates, I'm going to change it and it's going to be big. You get big trouble. You get big trouble. You get trouble that's outside of your reach. When God's going to change your life, the circumstances will present themselves, situations will present themselves to you in a way that seems impossible. God will let it get red hot, bright red hot. God will let it get ripe. You want Bible? I give you Bible. When God spoke to Abraham, told him that his descendants, this is a man that was childless when God spoke to him. And he had a barren wife that was too old to have children. I said she was barren, but also beyond her years of being able to conceive. Okay? And when God spoke to Abraham, he said, your descendants out of your body will be enslaved for 430 years. And then here's the phrase, until the fullness of the Amorites be revealed. And that little phrase right there is communicating that I'm going to let the enemy get to an extreme place, and it's going to cause me to move. So now let's fast forward in history. So when you read the book of Exodus and first, second, third chapter, you get to the third chapter of Exodus, and Abraham's descendants are enslaved for over 400 years in Egypt. And now this is the fulfillment of the divine plan. The divine plan, what divine plan? What are you talking about, Doc? What plan? The plan that was prophesied that would be implemented as a result of Genesis 3:15. Genesis 3:15, yeah. Genesis 3:15 is the first prophecy that speaks to the consequences of the fall of mankind from God, Adam and Eve. And then you get Genesis 3:15. And it's even hard now for scholars to unwrap all that's tied up in that one little verse. But out of that verse, there's a divine plan. Out of that prophecy, out of those words produce in Abraham, who comes out of nowhere in Genesis in the 12th chapter. You got Genesis 1 through 11, that's known as primordial history. In other words, that's theological and ideological events of primary importance Okay, I'm taking you to seminary. Hold on, stay with me. Genesis first chapter through the 11th chapter, primordial history. And then all of a sudden in Genesis, the 12th chapter, after the Tower of Babel, this guy Abram, comes into the literature out of nowhere. That's because, and you know, the literature, and when I call it literature, I'm talking about Genesis, the text, the divine text, Genesis. It's inspired, but it's also redacted. It's also edited, and it's edited by 4 different schools of writers. We call it J, E, P, and D. Oh, I took y'all to seminary today. I'm getting ready to get to my lesson, but you're in seminary today. That's so funny. Where the different sources of the writing, Yahweh's, Elohim's, J.E.P. Priestley, and Deuteronomistic writers, redactors, put together on purpose, put together the literature in such a way that you can follow God's will and God's way and God's thought and God's interaction with man. When I say man, I'm talking about humans. And so this guy, Abram, comes out of nowhere in the literature in the 12th chapter of Genesis, and God makes him a promise. He makes more than a promise, because a promise is one way. He makes a covenant. That's two-way. What do I mean by two-way? Two-way commitment. A covenant is a two-way promise. A promise is either one straightforward promise. I make you a promise and I can break my promise or not. But when we have a covenant, we have a dual agreement. We have a dual promise, and you can break your part of the covenant and I can keep mine, and like in marriage and vice versa, it's a covenant. And God makes a covenant with this man Abram and changes his name and changes his wife's name. And he uses this couple that's barren. He uses this couple. And you all need to read this Bible. You at home. Turn off Netflix. Give yourself 30 minutes a day and pick it up. If you don't understand, read the Message Bible, because it's written in a narrative way. It's an easier read. But learn the book that you believe in. It doesn't make any sense for you to just take somebody else's word for it when you got to answer for you. I'm going to get off my pulpit here and get into my lesson. But you all know it's about the truth with Dr. Z. And if I don't bring you relevant truth, that means that I'm guilty of a religious exercise. And I'm not going to be guilty of a religious exercise. I'm going to give you exactly what God tells me to say. And this is what he's telling me to say today. To stop allowing yourself to be so traumatized by all that's going on outside of you on a daily basis. And it looks like it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And there's no help in sight. And your thinking has become toxic because of all of that's going on outside of you is toxic. But I want you to know that thinking is coming from the inside of you. It's coming from in your brain and your perception of the things that are happening on the outside of you. So it's time to elevate your thinking, and the way to do that is to increase your faith. And the way to do that, faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word, is to feed your mind something much more healthy than all that junk food it's getting on the outside of you. Because one thing about the word, when you read the word, when you read the word, and this is the word right here today, it's on a piece of paper. You know what I'm saying. I really wish I had a Bible in front of me. But when you read the word, what you're reading goes from the outside inside. So that inspiration that you're reading goes from directly to your brain, and the inspiration goes to work. And God then can start doing the inner work in you that needs to be done. Words of healing, not words of distress. If you're taking in distress, you're gonna be stressed. give yourself a break and take in some healing. If all you do is eat junk food, your body is going to go to junk. Because you are what you eat. So your spirit man needs you to feed it something nutritious. That would be the word of God. Abraham, your descendants will be in Egypt for over 400 years. And then we see in the book of Exodus where God says, I have seen the affliction of my people. He hears their cry. It's not that they're crying out to him. They don't really know him. They get to know him, especially in that Red Sea, going across that Red Sea. They are socially conditioned to the gods of Egypt. They've been there 400 years, just like Black America, Mexican America, Japanese America, Chinese America, Native America. Native Americans, they're much more culturally isolated on their reservations or whatever to hold on to their own particular beliefs. They don't live through the white lens, the white supremac lens, like some of these other cultures, especially African Americans who were enslaved for 400 years and targeted by the supremacists. I'm talking plain here. But what happens over 400 years, such inculturation, there's something that happens where the brain then starts recording itself. And if you don't have anything to counteract that, you're going to drink the Kool-Aid, the proverbial Kool-Aid, and you're going to start believing yourself and get confused about who you are, what your worth is, based on how you're treated. And then it gets in your family systems. And you take those families to church. And you mixed all those stories from the culture, that toxicity from the culture, from your family to what you believe God is saying in the church. And you come up with this idea that it's okay to serve God in a secondhand way. What do you mean by that, Doc? I mean, it's okay for you to get all your clues from the society. It's okay for you to get all your clues, your ideas from the family, and it's okay to get all your ideas from the church, which is secondhand communication. And you do all that with a Bible in your hand that you never open, and you never get the direct information. You never get the direct revelation. It's all based on what somebody else said he said. Somebody said he said. Somebody says it says. No. And now when you're faced with a real problem and faced with a real situation, you find that you're not prepared. You find that the routines and the traditions and all that you've been socialized to believe in fall short of being able to help you and give you the hope and deliverance you need to deal with the real problem that's coming at you. And here we are in 2021 with this scenario. But I believe, just like in Exodus 3, when God says, I have seen the affliction of my people and I've come down to break and loose the grip of the oppression off of them. I believe we're prophetically there again. And it was not the fact that Israel, this was natural Israel, they didn't know them. They had their oral traditions, yeah. But they didn't they didn't have a written tradition. They had the covenant promises of Abraham, the blessing of Abraham that was passed down from Isaac, and Isaac to Jacob, and Jacob to his 12 sons. And these are their descendants in Egypt, just as prophesied to Father Abraham. And it wasn't so much that Father Abraham had a whole lot to work with. The scripture clearly says that Abraham believed God, and God gave him credit for righteousness based on him believing God. And so God helped his people, and he helped his plan. This was the divine plan, and he helped his plan. He's watching over his word to perform it. And I want you to know he has not stopped watching over his word to perform it. And here we are in 2021 dealing with a God that we claim to know, but we don't have the evidence that we really know, because the things that are happening in our lives don't match the text. And as long as we blame this, or blame the pastor, blame the church mother, blame the deacon, blame the trustee, blame the Sunday school teacher, blame the this and blame the that, while you can read for yourself, and you can pray for yourself, and you can seek God for yourself, and you can ask God for an understanding for your life, for yourself. Stop making excuses and pray. Turn that TV off. Turn it off. Dedicate some time for yourself. You're of age now. For yourself. Because you find yourself in a situation you can't help by yourself. So it's time to go direct. Now somebody needed that, because I did not plan to say that. But somebody needed that. It's called doing the work. It's called doing the work. Somebody needs to hear this. It's about the truth with Dr.Zee. Somebody needs to hear this. Okay, so let's get into our lesson, because we're on the lesson. We're on the lesson. But somebody's in a desperate space, a desperate place. You're having anxiety. You're having panic attacks. You can't sleep. You can't sleep. Your sleep is taken, and you don't feel safe, and your foundation, it feels shaky, and it's a whole lot going on. And that's because you're not grounded mentally in a place in your own perception and in your own life. You're not grounded personally to a foundation that you really believe in. Oh, but you need me to say it again. I said the reason why you are stressing, and you have anxiety, and you're having panic attacks, and you're overeating or undereating, and you're drinking, you're sneak drinking, you're hitting that weed, you're out there on that balcony. Okay, you're doing things that normally you wouldn't feel the need to do, but you're trying to numb out. See, you're trying to numb out those feelings, that panic feeling of being out of control. The reason why you're doing it is because you have not established personally a spiritual and emotional foundation for yourself that you really believe in. So if the old saying goes, if you don't believe in something, you'll fall for anything. Right now, you're falling. You're falling for this. You thought it was going to be the White House. You thought it was going to be the Capitol. Well, it's out the window now for that. You thought the government was going to be able to do it. You thought the system. You thought maybe your job. Well, that's even shaky now. You thought it was your marriage, but now your husband acting ticky-tacky and funny, and you can't quite put your finger on it, but homie is distracted. She's distracted. When he normally would go to bed, he's staying on that computer. When she normally would go to bed, she's making excuses to go out to 7-Eleven. Something's not adding up, and something's not right. And then the kids are feeling it, so that now that they feel the insecurity in the house, so that now the kids are acting out because they're so immature. They know no other way to express their anxiety and their panic, because what they believe in, which is their parents. Now, if their parents are insecure, and if their parents are panicking, and if their parents are full of anxiety, they're gonna feel that anxiety, and they're just following your lead. They're just a reflection of you. They're just a reflection of where you're at. If you're calm, they're calm. No sense in beating them up and getting all on them and bothering those kids when those kids are merely telling you, they're your report card. They're telling you where you're at. You're not in a good space. You're not in a good place. But I dare you to get on your knees. Find yourself a place on the planet by yourself and say, Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. If you withdraw yourself from me, where can I go, Lord? Where can I go? God of heaven, God of the ocean, God of trees, God of grass, God of the flowers, God of another day, God of the moon at night. I'm telling you, I dare you to cry out by faith. You don't have to know what you're doing. Just do it. Just mean it. And let him know, I need you now. Now. No delay. Ask forgiveness. Ask forgiveness. Cry out. Ask for help. I really did not know I was going to say this, but I'm giving you what comes out of my heart, because I'm going back to Mark 9, and I'll get into this in the story of Mark 9. But you need to know that this is the God of the Bible. We have to get back into the Bible, and it has to be personal faith, personal search. You're searching for God through the church. You need to search for God yourself. Fall in love with the word yourself. Read that word until it's reading you. Enter in. And it's not going to happen until you do it. And then you say, well, I will read the Bible, but I don't understand it. Well, I tell you what you do. When you start reading, start praying in your mind while you're reading. Lord, help me understand. Make the connection. Make the connection. Okay, so here we go. Mark 9:14. This is the same lesson last week, but the Lord he wants me to finish it and give you some other points. And this is the thing. When Jesus saw that his disciples, there were people arguing with his disciples because he, James, John, and Peter had gone off, and they're like the heavy part of the 12 or the 13, with Christ and Jesus included. It was Jesus and his 12 disciples. Well, 4 of them had been away. So that means that the other 9 were, out in society. And so when the 4 came back from where they were, and they were in a heavy spiritual encounter, they call it the Mount of Transfiguration, the very heavy spiritual revelations, and it was all necessary. But when they came back, Jesus and the 4 disciples saw that these scribes and these teachers of the law of the Torah, the law of God, the religious leaders were actually arguing with the 9 disciples. They were arguing. So Jesus comes back, and Jesus asks he didn't ask the disciples, he asked those looking on. He says, what the scribes, he says, what are you asking them? Basically, what are you bothering them about? And one of the things that I wanted to say as a disciple, as a pastoral person, as a pastor, as a woman of God, as a person in leadership, that would really comfort me. That would really comfort me to know that the Lord is my advocate. That when things and people are coming at me and challenging me as a servant of God, God is not pointing his finger at me and saying, why are you talking to these people? But he is my advocate. He's my protector. And he's saying, why are you bothering them? Scribes, Pharisees, whoever you are, preachers of the law, why are you bothering my people? Why are you questioning my people? You know good and well, you come for me. Come for me. Don't come for them. Come for me. See, because you can't handle me. And so that's in the 16th verse, Mark 9:16. Let's go to 17. So one of the multitude answers, This is what's going on, Master. And he now let's follow this a little closer than I did last week. Master, there's the respect. There's the reverence. This man, out of the multitude, the fact that he calls Jesus Master tells me his perception, how he sees who Jesus is. He calls him Master. He said, Master, I brought unto you my son, which has a dumb spirit, a spirit that makes my son mute. He cannot speak and he cannot hear. But he says, I brought him to you. In other words, he's saying, I brought him to your representatives. Now remember, Jesus had been away. So evidently this man knew of Jesus and his disciples. They had already had a ministry reputation for being people who could provide release, deliverance, answers. They represented the church. They represented the church. I don't know who it was. I heard a testimony. Yeah, one of my daughter's friends gave me a testimony how she had this I won't call her name, but she had this situation in her life where she was really grieved, and she was so grieved, she was so upset. I think it was over several family members dying, and she had gotten numbed out where she couldn't cry. And some of you all are going to relate to this. And she was at a space where she could no longer cry. She was that shut down. You can get shut down from grief. Let me tell you what grief will do. Grief puts some people in the grave. Grief is nothing to play with. Grief will shut you down and shut you up. You'll become immobilized with grief. Your life you can actually get fixated with grief and stuck in grief and not be able to find your way out of a grieving soul, of a grieving mindset. So grief had shut her down. Grief had shut her down to the point where she could no longer cry. She was numbed out. She was completely numbed out. So she was sharing her testimony with me, and she was saying that she decided that she would start going back to church because she thought, well, I can go to church and maybe I will hear some inspiration. I will hear something, the choir, the praise team, something will happen in church that will help me calm down enough to be able to cry. So she started going back to church. And she went to church for several weeks, like over a month. And she was just as numb as she'd always been. And it was like a place to be in a numb place like that emotionally and spiritually is miserable. Because you feel terrible and there's nothing you can do about it. You know you need to cry and you know you can't. You can't. Nothing you can do. You just have that knot. You have that knot. You know what I'm talking about. That deep knot in your soul that feels like a fist, and it's just a presence. It's a presence in your soul, and it's anxiety. It's like a foreign feeling deep in your soul, and therapy doesn't take it out. Talking to Nana doesn't take it out. Playing with kids doesn't take it out. All of the other attempts, whether it's food, drugs, sex, money, shopping, nothing takes it out. It has you. You don't have it. It has you. And so this is where this young lady was. And she kept going to church. Finally, she got tired. She said, you know what? I'm going to go one more time. I'm going to church one more time. And if nothing happens, I'm just going to forget it. I'm not going back God's not there to help me. God's not there. And so she went back to church, and she says it was during the offering time. And she was just sitting there because she knew this is it. I'm not coming back in here. And it was something the pastor said during the offering triggered something in her mind. From her mind of hearing that, it hit like electricity, and it went through her body. And all of a sudden, boom, it touched that spot. And she started bawling like a baby. Now, all these people around her in the church was looking at her like, it ain't time for you to be getting happy. This is offering time. Why you crying like that in this offering time? But she said she couldn't stop. She couldn't stop. And so one thing I love about the black church, I can say something about the black church because that's the church I've been in all my life. I've visited many, many, many other churches, and I am a part of other multicultural churches, even right now. But the black church will allow you to freely express yourself. We're good about that. That's part of the heartbeat of the black community. The heartbeat of the black community, I always say the black community is very heart healthy. It is very compassionate when it comes to the emotional feelings and hurt feelings of its constituents. And so this young lady was just crying and crying, and she was grateful to be able to cry. Because only God knew what that weeping represented for her personally, to be able to cry. Some of you all need this, what I'm saying. You actually need to weep. Stop numbing out your feelings with food. Stop numbing out your feelings with substances. Stop numbing out your feelings with that bad stuff on that computer. Stop numbing out your feelings with dealing with that man's wife. Stop. It's not working. It's not working. It's not working. It's a situation that's out of your reach. If what the solutions you have fall short, get honest with yourself. It's not about being honest with me. It don't mean nothing. It's about you being honest with you. There's two people you cannot ever pay me to lie to, and that's me and God. We're both getting the truth at all times. Because anything other than that will give me mental illness. And I'm not getting mental illness. I'm going to tell Zenobia Marie the truth. And I'm going to tell God the truth. Because Zenobia Marie understands something. It's the God she violates that gives her health and strength to do it. He loves her like that. I'll give you a Bible. The Psalm says, against thee and thee only have I sinned. Every time I take a breath, it's God that gives me the ability to do it. He loves me more than I understand. He supports me more than I understand. Why wouldn't I tell God the truth of where I'm at? Why wouldn't I tell him the truth? He already knows it. He knows it better than I know it. And so back to this lesson, this man he answers Jesus' question by telling him the situation. He says, I brought the church, my son, and this is the condition of my son. And let me tell you a little bit more detail. He says, 18th verse of Mark 9, he says, wherever the Spirit takes him, it rips him, it tears him, and he foams at the mouth, and he grinds his teeth, and he just gets pale. And I asked your disciples, I asked the church, I brought in the church, and I got a problem that the church couldn't fix. Oh, let me tell you something. God's speaking to you today. You know who you are. You know who I'm talking to. Don't you turn that radio off. Hold on. You know if you have a problem that the church, your pastor, your family, you're too embarrassed to share it. It embarrasses you. It grieves you. It's outside of your reach. And you've done everything you know. And let me tell you something else. Because I want to get to this. Jesus said, he answers, it's like Jesus speaks out loud. He says, "Oh, faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer?" This is my very favorite phrase in the whole pericope. He says, "Bring him to me." Lord have mercy. Jesus says, "Bring your son to me." Now, really, I could do a whole lesson on that one phrase. Bring him to me. The authority. He called him master. Bring him to me. How many of you pastors listening to me? How many of you leaders listening to me? Are you walking in that kind of faith and authority? Have you gotten yourself lined up enough with God? You have the confidence to say, "I got a word. I got a word." Because see, you and I say we, any pastor, any preacher, listen to me, any minister, evangelist, missionary, whatever you call yourself, you have a call, you have a job that you can't do without the Lord. Religion falls short of the task. You need the authority and the voice of the Holy Spirit to say, "Bring him to me. Bring it to me. I got a word from the Lord. I got a word from not a word from me, a word from," see, my words will fall short. But I got a word. Bring him to me, lamb. Bring him to me, sheep. Bring him to me, church member. Some of y'all got all this confidence in your pastor. "Oh, I'm going to call the pastor." Well, what did the pastor say? Some people believe that pastor can say and do anything. That your pastor is nothing without the pastor, the master. You can have the pastor, but you need the master. I'm just saying, I'm just telling the truth. It's about the truth with Dr. Z. You can call your pastor. But you know what? You better hope your pastor is following the master. And it's your responsibility. It's your responsibility to know who you are following and whether or not they are responsibly and credibly following God. You can't blame your pastor for you following somebody who's not doing that. Your own personal walk with God has to tell you whether or not you in the Lord's will or outside of the Lord's will. You ought to know enough of the word. I don't have to break all of that and defend all that. You ought to have enough of the word in you to be able to answer for you. Because if the Lord called you home, you're not going to be able to say to the Lord when you meet him, "Or you see, it was that pastor you gave me." No, that's not going to fly. That's not going to fly. And if you need an answer about your pastor, if you need an answer, if you say, "My soul's not being fed, I'm not growing, something's wrong, something's off," you got to push your plate back or do whatever you got to do and put yourself under consecration and get answers from the Lord for yourself and grow up in God. It's a hard lesson today, but it ain't nothing but the truth. It's about the truth with Dr. Z. You know you're growing up when you stop blaming everything and everybody outside of you for what's going on the inside of you. That's when you know you're growing up. You want to know what it means to grow up? What it means to grow up is to take accountability and personal responsibility for you, for your own brain and for your own processing, for what you have identified as truth or a lie, not someone outside of you. You know you are growing up when you say, you know what, I need just some time and space to get some clarity. I need some clarity. I need a word. I need to get something from the Lord for myself. Jesus is still saying today, bring it to me. Bring it to me. It seems like it's so difficult, doesn't it? It's not. It's not. That's what the devil wants you to believe. He wants you to believe that it's too difficult. It's not too difficult. It's not too hard. And it is the most necessary. In the chaotic situation we find ourselves in, are you kidding me? It's time to bring it to the Lord. So Jesus asked this man this very compassionate question in the 21st verse, because in the 20th verse, they said, when they brought the boy in front of Jesus, the spirit acted out. Now that's really important, because you know God's getting ready to move when the devil acts out. I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but right now for a lot of people, the devil is really acting out. Ooh, but there's some glory on the other side of that acting out. If you could just hold on. Jesus asked the Father a very loving, compassionate question. How long has it been? How long you been going through this, man? I know when they handed your boy in your arms, you didn't think it was gonna be this. And I can't imagine the disappointment you going through as your boy developed. And all of a sudden, you had a normal child. And then something triggered that child. And all of a sudden, that boy's trying to walk into the fire. Oh, that boy, he acted like he couldn't hear. He couldn't speak. And you stand in front of your boy and he's looking at you like deer in the headlights. And your mouth is going wah, 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 wah. Because he don't understand the thing you're saying. He can't hear you, and he can't tell you he can't hear you. And on top of that, he goes berserk and starts having seizures. And it's all demonic. I can't imagine the disappointment in that father when that first happened. I know that man blew an emotional gasket. What in the world is this? I don't have a point of reference. Anybody on his mama's side do this? Anybody on his daddy's side do this? Did anybody got a point of reference? Where did this come from? What is the history of this devil? Where does it come from? This is a hot mess. And he didn't ask for it. It chose him. In other words, I'm saying this father didn't ask for this trouble. This trouble found him. All he did was have a baby. In good faith. With so much promise. Oh, but look at the Lord. He's not condemning the man for anything. He asked him how long. Because see, when you got a problem, well, now let me say it like this. When a problem has you, because some of these problems, you don't have a problem. That problem has you. And it occurs over a protracted period of time. It occurs over and over and over. And so you find yourself in a wrestling match. You find yourself trying to fix it. You're trying this and trying that. And every time it gets worse and worse and worse. I can't imagine this man, as this boy getting older, and he starts making excuses for him. He starts coping. He starts trying to hide him. He can't never leave him alone, because that thing might trigger, and all of a sudden his boy's getting burned. All of a sudden that boy's being drowned. All of a sudden that devil acts up whenever that devil feels like it's necessary. So he has to have constant caregivers, constant babysitters, constant. His daddy can't live. Now his daddy's a prisoner of the devil that's in his son. Did you hear what I said? Now his daddy's the devil of the prisoner that's in his son. How many people in these families? You're a prisoner of the devil that's in your mama. You're a prisoner of the devil that's in your daddy. You're a prisoner of the devil that's in your sister. You're a prisoner of the devil that's in your brother. You're a prisoner of the devil that's in your caregiver. You're a prisoner of the devil that's over whoever is over you. Lord have mercy. Help me today. How many people are you not the cause of the problem? You're the recipient. You downstream of that thing. And as you think it's bad on them, but what's bad on them has been bad on you. It hit you. It not only hit them, it flowed down to you. They couldn't handle it, and you can't handle it. It's too much. 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 The man answered him. He said, ever since this boy was a child, it started happening. It started happening when he was just a child. It put him in the fire, put him in the water, because it seeks to destroy him. He's growing up with a spirit that has an agenda to rob him of his future. He's growing up with a spirit that seeks to rob him of his purpose. He's growing up with a spirit that seeks to not only take his person, but it's want to destroy him. Because if it gets him, it's got the purpose. He's the prize. He was my son. He was my prize. How did the devil get in this? How did the devil impose this? How did the devil take the dream to a nightmare? All I did was have a baby. All I did was have a baby. Then in the 22nd verse, the man gets honest. He gets honest. He says, Lord, if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. That's a real place. That's what I was saying a moment ago. Cry out. Help. Help. Lord, help. Lord, help. And Jesus tells him, Jesus gives him a word. He takes him to school. And I want to apologize because I'm a little emotional today. Because I can feel the burden. I can feel my words today. I can feel my listeners today. I can feel you're relating to this lesson. You're relating to these words, and I can feel it. But I want you to know that you come to the right place when you come to God. When you come to God. He said, if you can believe, all things are possible. I feel that so many people have suffered religious abuse because of that verse. Thank you. Thank you. Rashid, I'm telling you, accelerated radio is numero uno, number one. Oh, thank you, Rashid. Uh, in our churches, sometimes because the pastors and the ministers and whoever have known they didn't have that word in that moment for the person, they would flip the script and tell whoever that was that sought help from them, that would go to the altar and try to get an answer from them. Oh, you all you got to do is believe, and you believe. If you believe, you receive. Now, if you believe, God's not gonna do it. If you don't believe, God's not gonna do. And it actually is like a reversal of shame and guilt, and it makes the person leave feeling worse than they did when they came for the help. I'm not taking that back. That's the truth. It's about the truth with Dr. Z. And there's been so much religious abuse behind that one thing, that if you believe, you can receive. And the implication, if you don't believe, then you're not going to receive. Wow. Well, what if I'm so worn down, so tired, and so disenchanted and so beat down with the beat down? What if anybody, can you see me? Can you see me? Can you see my struggle? Do you have any compassion? This man said, Lord, if you can do anything, do something, just help. And I feel like this. I don't need to go to no preacher, no pastor, or nothing. If you can't help, then the best thing to do is just leave me alone and say, well, I'm not able to. This is above my pay grade. Or you know what? Let's just take a week and pray about it. But don't reverse it because you don't have what you purport to say, what you claim to have. Don't reverse it and put it back on me. It's bad enough as it is. Now, if that's not your experience, then don't have nothing to say about it. That's not you. But somebody else has got that experience. So if that's not your situation, then you don't have any reason to judge it because it don't have nothing to do with you. But somebody else has gone through that religious abuse. Okay? It says the father of the child cried out. What I love about this father, that man was honest. He wasn't trying to fix God. He wasn't trying to fix his son. He wasn't trying to fix himself. He wasn't trying to fix the disciples. He was just honest about what it was. He was honest about the situation. And he told him, he said, with tears, Lord, I believe. I believe. I do believe. But there is something that's so torn down in me. There's something in me that's so tired. There's something in me that's so weary. There's something in me that's so socially conditioned. There's some thoughts in me my brain has taken pictures of that made me that gave me unbelief. Help that too. This is what I love about this father. He was at the end of his rope. He was like, you know what? Time out. It's too much. Yeah, Lord, I believe. I'm talking to you, Lord. I believe. Evidently, I do believe, but evidently, I don't believe enough. So what I'm going to do is ask you to help my son and help me too, all at the same time. But whatever you do, help us. Help us. Help us. I'm here for help. And that's what some of y'all need to be today. Help me. Help me. I'm here for help. I fall short. It's more than I understand. It doesn't matter. Help me. Help me. That's a real place. It's a real place. When Jesus saw the people running together, he rebuked the foul spirit, the dumb and deaf spirit. He said, come out and enter him no more. In other words, this is a Red Sea situation. The enemies you see today, you will see no more. This is it. It ain't going to no more generations. You're out of here. He cast that devil out. The spirit cried out. It rent that boy. It tore him. He cried out. He had another convulsion, and people thought the boy was dead, but the boy wasn't dead. The boy was free. Jesus took the boy by the hand, lifted him up, and he rose up. When his disciples asked him, why couldn't we do what you did? Why couldn't we, Lord, what's wrong with us that we didn't have what you had? You gave us authority. You gave us power. You gave us the calling. You gave us the task. You gave us the job. You gave us the Holy Spirit. Why couldn't we cast this devil out? Jesus let them know. Oh, don't worry about it. It's not you. It's not you. You're not there yet. Just follow me. Follow me. Because this kind is above your pay grade right now. It can only come out by fasting and prayer. There's certain levels of spirituality you're not ready to deal with right now. But you know what? You always got me. This is Dr. Z. I'm going to see you next week. Hope I helped you.